and welcome to a new session of Interdisciplinary program. Great pleasure and privilege to introduce our guest speaker tonight, Yeјal Vaiżman. Yeјal Vaiżman is a professor in spatial and visual cultures at Goldsmiths University in London, and also he is a founder of the well-known research agency Forensic Architecture. Research agency Forensic Architecture emerged as a result of the years of theoretical and historical work, mainly over Israeli and Palestinian conflicts, and with the focus on the relation between violence and architecture. Yeјal Vaiżman introduced this term, architecture of violence, considered that architecture can be part of the military strategy, and in this line of reasoning, architectural debris and also destruction of the urban landscape as a result of the military conflicts and operation can be used as evidence in investigation of war crimes. The main focus of forensic architecture is put on visual data and unnoticed pieces of evidence, and through their work become accessible for public interest and public dialogue. This agency includes a wide range of tools such as and methods such as videos, 3D modeling, animation, drawings, in the tracing of the violation of the human rights and international humanitarian law. Their work is presented as a part of the legal and institutional prosecutions, as a part of the evidence in the courts, also in the human rights reports, and what's fascinating at the same time as a part of the well-known exhibition over the world. So in addition to this fascinating work with forensic architecture, Yeјal Vaiżman published more than 15 books, some of them Hololand, Israel's Architecture of Occupation, published in 2007, The List of All Possible Evils, Humanitarian Violation from Iran to Gaza, published in 2011, Forensics in 2014, and Forensic Architecture, Violence and the Threshold of Detectability, published in 2017. What is really fascinating with the work of forensic architecture, I would like to summarize just in the few points at the end of this introduction. Actually, the first is this recreation, let's say, of the spatial temporal conditions of some events, where the evidence which is rejected from the state authorities and powerful instances is put into the light of this public sensorium. That, let's say, leads me to the idea of George Berkeley, philosopher, who says to be is to be perceived, linking the existence with the perceptions. The second way to link it to this first point is interpretation of aesthetics, which is brilliantly explained in the work of Yeјal Vaiżman, the collaborative work with Tomas Kinnan, when aesthetics is, let's say, interpreted in this primordial or etymological meaning of ancient Greece, linked to the senses and to the perceptions, not like was developed in the 18th century, concerned with the notion of the beauty. And the last point that I would like to highlight is that through the work of forensic architecture, the museums and galleries are transformed into the, let's say, public forums, where the evidence is served into the function of public truth. Yeјal, thank you so much because you accepted to be part of this program, so please welcome.
Thank you very much, Diomir, for this absolutely surprising and very interesting introduction. Surprising because it's not standard. It kind of set a tone for perhaps the depth of the conversation that we could have following this talk. In counter forensics, which is to say inverting the forensic gaze against state that usually monopolize forensics, we need to invert the sum total of our operation in 3 distinct domains. So the domains where forensics operate is the field, the crime scene where violence has taken place and where traces are left. That's the first one. Second, in the lab where samples from the site are processed, and in the forum, which for state investigators, police, the secret services, the army, would always be the court. This is where evidence is presented. Counterforensics need to invert the way in which we think about those 3 sides and the relation between them. Initially, I would say that the state, when the state undertake forensic operation, and you see it again and again in the genre I hate most on television, and that is the true crime genre, you see the police tape coming up around the crime scene, creating a zone of exception in which only state agents could enter. If the state both put the cordon, but is the suspected violator, what would stop it to falsify the narrative of what has taken place? How to enter into the cordon uninvited? How to get material leaked out under the police cordon is very important. Second, whereas the state operates in the lab, we replace the lab with a studio, an open space of experimentation. The lab is a closed space which is controlled by scientific protocols. The studio is an open and collaborative medium in which we continuously work in the open and in open sources, and making new alliances in order to establish the facts. When the third space of forensics is close to us, very often in the country I come from, in Israel, the legal system is weaponized against the Palestinians that are colonized and oppressed. We need to find alternative forums to present the work. So indeed, counterforensic has got nothing to do with forensic practices as practiced by the state. In fact, they are radical inversion of them. I'll take you through the first set of examples that I want to show you in this lecture called Counter Investigations. We are here in a village in the south of Israel, Palestine, an area called the Negev or Nakab in Arabic, where the entire desert is controlled by the state. There's very little private properties. There is, however, a Palestinian Bedouin settlement that the state wants to demolish, and they raid it. Before the raid, we knew the raid is happening. A lot of activists and people working in solidarity with Palestinians are going on the site and recording the following scene. Police is coming like it's a military operation. These people that live in this village are citizens of the state, but still they're treated like enemies. Those videos are recorded by activists on the site. Police is moving in, pushing and shoving. And a member of parliament here is trying to get into and stop the police from demolishing that village. Until now, you would see in the next piece of footage, something is actually happening. And listen now. Okay. Shots. 4 shots, 5 shots. The moment that these shots are taken, the videographer is taking cover. The videographer's name is Keren Manor. She is an Israeli activist, anti-colonial activist. She takes cover behind a rock, and when she switches the camera back on again, this is what she records. We hear the continuous sounds of a car horn. The police establishes a cordon, not with a tape, but with pushing the activist out. Nobody can enter into the crime scene. Massive confusion. It's impossible to see what is going on. We've actually modeled and mapped this video onto, in order to navigate and see what do we see within those lights, within that. They're all trying to get closer to the car, and they think somebody is hurt within this car, somebody. And indeed, as the horn is still beeping, the blood is draining from a teacher called Yaqub Musa Abul Kian, who is bleeding to death within that vehicle, that nobody can come and help him because of the police cordon that is established. What you see now is attempts that we make to actually spread the video on the model in order for that technique to be made more successful.
Still, police is very violent. There is shouting and shooting.
And now in Keren's own
all
words,
a total mess, and I don't understand exactly what is going on. I
doesn't
keep
know what's
hearing
going
this
on.
beeping of the car that is next to me, but I cannot see the car.
And in that car is, that is really just a few dozen meters away from her, a man is bleeding to death without medical attention, and would later die of his wounds within that vehicle. In the morning, the Israeli police tweets that it was a terror attack, that this teacher, Yaqub Musa Abul Kian, was actually tried to run over a policeman, and the police had no other option but to kill him. So they accuse him of being a terrorist, and their action, their shots, are in self-defense. They wound a member of parliament, Ayman Odeh, who is the head of the Communist Party in Israel-Palestine, or sort of in the Knesset, in Israeli part. And Benjamin Netanyahu, our prime minister, is confirming that there was a terror attack and that he will destroy the home and deny the citizenship of those supporting terrorists, meaning of Palestinian citizens of the state. So it's not only one incident, become now a political, general political problem of the implicit racism of the Israeli state. The head of police accuses the member of the head of the Communist Party that he incited that violence. He says, the blood is on your hands. We saw the blood was on his face. The head of police accuses the driver, the teacher, to be a member of Daesh. But then they make an error and release a video that is shot by a helicopter. It's a thermal video. It shows only temperature, not light. And here is, they say, this is the vehicle of the terrorist. Here are the policemen, and they justify themselves by releasing a media artifact. And you see how the terrorist accelerates towards the policemen and run them over. And they say, okay, here is the terror attack. And but they don't know really how to interpret aerial imagery. So we have two bits of media. One is the woman activist Keren Manor, who films and records sound, but she doesn't see. It's dark. She can only hear the gunshot but not see. And the other bit of footage is the helicopter footage that sees but don't hear. So we sync them up together, and let's see what comes out of that synchronization. See, at the moment the shots are fired, here, let's go there. The moment the shots are fired, we see the car is not yet hit the police officer. It's happened before. And in fact, what we see is if we zoom in to that location, we can even see the thermal signature of the gunshots that killed Yaqub Musabulkian, or that at least hit him. And only after those shots are fired do we see the car accelerating. Only after it accelerates towards the policemen and run them over. Okay, so the story is very different than what the state told. We do not release it in the court. We put it simply on a blog, on an activist blog, showing our interpretation about 24 hours after the incident happened. The head of the Communist Party tweets our analysis, and the Israeli police respond to his tweet saying it's a manipulative edit, it's a distortion of evidence, etc. Basically, they're fake newsing us. The Times of Israel is actually reporting on something that happens very fast. So because we shook the tree and the confidence a little bit, all of a sudden a leak from the pathology institute of the Israeli police is released saying that the driver had a bullet wound to the knee, which support the fact that he might have not been, that he was shot in the knee and then lost control of the vehicle. Still, the Minister of Police is saying, I'll continue to tell the truth. The left will not frighten me. He means us here. But even the mainstream news like Jerusalem Post start accepting that evidence and the questions and amplifying our questions. In response, the state says, well, he was driving with the lights off. And if he drives in the nights with the light off, he would, at least could be reasonably mistaken to be intending to run over the policeman. So we were going back to all our evidence to see whether indeed he was driving with the lights off or not. And actually we discovered that car, and we didn't know which car it is, whether it is his car, driving down a slope, and we see the lights are on. So we are trying to confirm whether that car is his by comparing it to the aerial image. So we see those two silhouettes against the vehicle, and here another two silhouettes. So now we're going to check whether we have police officers at that location that can confirm it. And you see in the police own video, you see the shadows of those officers. We locate them, and we could confirm that indeed, if you match the camera point of view, you could see that those are exactly making the right silhouettes that confirm that this is the car. This is indeed the car. And if it is the car, the lights are on, and the state argument completely collapses. That comes out in the news. And then we are making another study to kind of establish exactly the fact that even though, so now it's accepted the lights were on, it's accepted the police fired first, but the state is still saying he might have revenged after being shot at and accelerated. And we wanted to show that actually the car would have driven down the slope in exactly the same speed, even if he would not press the gas pedal, just simply by the slope. And what we do is make a reenactment with the villagers, with the people in the village, and with actors. We take the same vehicle, and at the moment the shots are fired, we simply we simply lift the foot from the pedal. This is the reenactment with the villagers. And here you would see, we try to compare the time that it takes for the vehicle to go down the slope and see whether it is the same speed. So at the moment the shots are fired, we remove the foot from the pedal, and we measure the time that it takes for the car to roll down. And we see it is very, very close to the same speed if you measure them. So effectively, if the trigger that the state said would trigger the terrorist attack was the foot on a pedal, now we have a situation where we know there was no foot on the pedal at all. Some state apologies followed, and even Netanyahu, our prime minister, apologized to the Bedouins, but in a sense the apology was also undertaken under the politics of settler colonial domination, and was a very sort of utilitarian and cynical attempt to with which Netanyahu tried to attack the same prosecution that charges him for bribery. But what we do in many of our cases is that we try to look at, not only if we look at the incident, at kind of a split-second incident, we try to look at it in relation to the structural conditions that occurred. Here what you see is effectively the destruction of the village to follow the shooting, empowered by the lie that he was a terrorist, the driver was a terrorist. They create this revenge and they ruin this poor village. But we are continuing our investigation into not only that village, but through that village into a great number of other Palestinian Bedouin villages all across the desert in Israel that are unrecognized, that are continuously subjected to harassment and to demolitions and other things like that. Here is something also on what Yomir was saying, that our relation to the art world. This exhibition was actually funded by the Tate Gallery because we selected to show it for our Turner Prize entry, which we did not win. But here you have a situation by which not showing something in court, you both need the means to finance it, and the Tate helped us finance it, and also to display it and create debate and media around it through that issue. The next case I'd like to speak to you about is our NSU investigation. Again, an investigation of state crime. We were invited by the People Tribunal, again, not by the court, but by a People's Tribunal called Unraveling NSU Complex. This is a group of activists and family members of mainly migrants from Turkey residing in Germany that have been subjected to a wave of neo-Nazi terror murders in the first decade of the 21st century. One of those killings, one of those 10 killings, took place in an internet cafe. What you see here is an internet cafe. And here the body is of Halit Yozgat, a young man, that was manning the counter of this internet cafe. Out of here, the two murderers came and shot him with a silencer. And so far, like many other of the NSU killings, only that here at the back sat Secret Service agent, Verfassungsschutz agent in German, that is like, I don't know, FBI in the US, and I don't know what's the equivalent Secret Service in Macedonia. But he was there his task was actually to police on neo-Nazi killings. He was at the scene of the crime. He did not stop it, and in fact disappeared from the scene immediately after. And when he was found by the police later, he made a very problematic reenactment video of his movement through the internet cafe, trying to demonstrate why he didn't see the body when he left the internet cafe, why he didn't hear the gunshot, and why he didn't smell the gunpowder in the air, and in fact left without it. So here the video, whereas in the first case, the video is a video of the shooting in Israel, Palestine, here the video is a video of reenactment. It's a video of police process. And indeed, the police process itself is part of the problem, because we're not investigating the murder. That's the task of the police. We're investigating the state relation to it and the state mishandling it. How come the police is letting that witness go after he was in a neo-Nazi terror site, and based on what? It seems to us very, very strange. So effectively, the crime that we investigate here is the crime that happens in front of the camera. It's the crime of the reenactment itself. When the activists start sniffing around and asking too much questions, the state classified the file of why this Secret Service agent was in the internet cafe for 120 years. So that became even more suspicious. And then the material was leaked out. The police investigation was leaked out. And it allowed us to do something rather interesting, and that is to build an exact replica of the shop that didn't exist anymore, down to every element, to the computer, to the glasses, to everything that was in it, in order to demonstrate that this was indeed the case. And that he must have heard, that he could not have not seen. It was an investigation into the threshold of perception and aesthetics in this moment. We shot a gun
was threaded with different sound suppressors to simulate the suppressor used in the crime.
This is the Colt 32 with a wet suppressor.
So we shot a gun in Arizona, we recorded it, and then played it within our space.
High-level gunshot. Start now.
And made sure to record it at the place where he sat, in order to show that he would definitely have heard it. Also, because it was an internet cafe, we had all the logs in and logs out of all the other witnesses, and we could create a kind of a reenactment with actors. The reenactment being the crime itself, with the participation of the camera. The camera itself becomes part of that crime, if you like. And so here is a kind of a video of the original reenactment, and we reenacted the reenactment, including reenacting the location of the camera.
And analog measures.
We're able to actually reconstruct the point of view of Teme, the Secret Service agent. On the right, you see what he would have seen at any given moment, to show that indeed he could not have missed the body from the position that he claimed he was. Now, we do not know that this is how he moved through the space. We know this is what he say, and what we wanted to say is that he's lying, and there is no business for the state to believe him that he was not there. We showed that piece in Documenta, which is a big art exhibition that takes place by chance in the same city where this murder took place, in fact, a few hundred meters away. In a very modest setting, we showed that video. And police officers and parliamentarians and other people came to see it in the art space, and in fact, invited that investigation to be presented in a parliamentary commission of inquiry, that exactly the body that was in charge of making, holding the state to account for the relationship, the too close a relationship that the German state agents have sometimes with neo-Nazis. So while the art world, in the art press, people kind of were a bit confused about it, and a review said, this is an artwork. This is not an artwork, it's evidence. In the presentation in the Parliamentary Commission of Inquiry, the CDU, the Christian Democratic Party, which we kind of accused of covering up, said this is art, not evidence, though it didn't help them, and Andreas Stemmer, the Secret Service agent, had to be brought in and to look at the evidence himself. And here we draw the kind of the procedural diagram of what we've done, of how the investigation has happened and took place. That is to say, how it moved from art, cultural forum, from production in the art world to performance in political forum, in a legal forum, and in the media. And that is the kind of process that counterforensic demands. In fact, it is, and this is the evidence of what it takes to make an investigation like that, and how counterforensics always have to show the kind of the procedural difficulties that are being brought up, the sort of the cover-ups of that case, and that became part of our exhibition at the ICA in London. Another type of, so if in the first investigation, I showed you how an investigation is sponsoring an investigation. In the second one, I showed you how it being presented in an art context opens up the political context. In the third one, we are questioning at all whether the art world, the art context in which we present, is a kind of a neutral forum that could simply and without any problem replace the political one. And the answer was not. When we were invited to show at the Whitney Biennale in New York, we were made aware of the fact that the vice chair of the Whitney board was owning a company that produced tear gas. So by showing in a museum, we decided to investigate that vice chair of the board, contributing to wide civil society and activist effort to oust him from that. And this is what we've done.
Forensic architecture is training a machine learning.
In fact, we wanted to train a machine learning classifier to identify where on the internet we could find that his munition, because we did not know where exactly he's selling them. So we wanted to train a machine vision classifier to identify them. And usually what you do, you collect images like this, you annotate them, and you train the machine vision classifier to identify them, and you send them on the wild. But usually you need many, many more images than what we actually found. You need several tens of thousands to make a good classifier. And we've decided that we wanted to work differently. So again, every project is also a network of collaborators and collaboration. And here is one of the activists in Tijuana scanning for us, one of those. And here in Palestine, my friend Emily Jassir is scanning one of those triple chaser that is used by Israeli forces in Palestine. From this, we created a model. And from the model, we built a kind of a system by which we could generate many what we call synthetic images, images that fake images that would allow our system to find real ones. So we threw them in all sort of configuration against backdrop, and we realized that the problem really is the background. We needed very contrasted background for the computer to understand. So we placed the classifier against all sort of weird looking backdrops. And seizure warning: if anyone has photosensitivity or tendency for epilepsy, please do not look at the next section. And effectively, we started to create that system by which these classifiers are produced automatically against a set of random backdrops that were allowing us to effectively train the classifier better. So the film is all a film for people. It's an artwork. It was shown at the Whitney, but it's also a data set for the computer, meaning the computer is now able to identify, you know, this is the training set. We provided most of the still frame that would be necessary to train a classifier. So it's a kind of an encoded code within the video. And then, you know, when you send it out on the wild,
classifier on synthetic images,
it's actually coming up with you send some keywords, and it kind of like, yeah, it's not working very perfectly, but it can identify some of those. Yeah, we contributed obviously to the resignation of that person from the board of Warren B. Candace, and later to his disinvestment from tear gas. So I think we showed that, you know, institutional critique as the kind of the critique within the forum in which one present can also exist within not only as a kind of critical gesture that would make you think, but as an actual action with consequences in the field.
The incident was preceded by another shooting.
I don't have much time, but I'll show you this investigation we've done in Eastern Turkey, in a Kurdish-speaking area of Diyarbakir, where a human rights lawyer, a wonderful human rights lawyer called Tahi Elchi, was shot to death. And the Turkish state said that PKK militants shot him. We know that those two PKK militants were involved in shooting police officers here. We saw that. And they were running towards an alleyway. And here now the Turkish state said that they have actually murdered the human rights lawyer here in red, who was just giving a press conference to protect an ancient monument there. When they started running, the participants in the press conference all revealed themselves to be police officers all of a sudden, drawing guns. About 40 shots were fired, but the only fatality was actually Tahir Elchi, who was found on the ground dead with a bullet hole to the back of his head, something that is does happen to a Turkish human rights lawyer in this part of the world. I cannot go in huge detail over this analysis, but just say that using all those cameras, we were able to build a 3D model.
In detail, the 2 seconds and 20 frames of interest. We can
modeling 2 seconds in great detail. We could turn every frame into a kind of a different model that showed that it was in fact the police officers here in blue rather than the PKK militant that shot the bullet in the direction of Tahir Elchi and effectively killed him. But again, every incident is also an opening to a much wider political issue that is not contained within the killing itself. That killing has happened at the heart of Sur, the very beautiful World Heritage Center of Diyarbakir, and it led to effectively the invasion of the Turkish military a few days later and the complete destruction of that town. So we have a certain kind of political figure-ground relation between a killing and the destruction of a city. Now the police officer we identified are standing trial, so it's a good sign, but we don't know what is, how that will pan out, and we're very worried about different aspects of that issue. I don't know if I should, because I'm already 45 minutes. I don't know if I should move towards one more investigation. Tiomir, what do you say? Tiomir?
Okay, yes, I'm here.
I wonder if I should show another investigation, or you would benefit. Do you think the audience would benefit more from?
Yes, you can continue with one more, and we can end this presentation.
Okay. That is the killing of Mark Duggan.
In which Duggan was traveling around.
Mark Duggan in London in 2011, perhaps the most notorious police killing of a racialized man, Mark Duggan. Was followed by the police and was shot by them. And the police said it was at V53 who shot him. We only know his cipher, we don't know his name. Shot him twice, said that he saw him with a gun in his hand, something that would make the killing potentially justified. It was a split-second decision. He was clearly seeing that he was holding a gun in his right hand, and he felt a threat to his life, and that justified the killing. The problem was that the gun was found 7 meters away, not next to the car at all. And that problem, and it's covered up by the police not being able to provide an explanation, nor the police watchdog able to provide an explanation for that, were the reason for the wider scale protest and social unrest that London has seen for a generation. In 2011, any of you that have either was tuning to the news or lived in London at the time would remember half a city was in fact blocked. Stores were torched, and was the wider scale riots in the city. All we had was text, and we were looking at 500 pages of testimonies. There were no images and videos of it. And we were looking to where officers were disagreeing with each other and where they were too closely aligning themselves with each other. For example, when 11 officers, so when you look at evidence, you want to see that things work together, the testimonies work together, but sometimes you see situation where you have too close a kind of a collusion. For example, when all officers mistake a white Mazda to a silver Mazda. So this is kind of textual analysis we do, and based on that, we model from the scene, looking at the text and dividing it up and working on it analytically, mathematically within the system in order to figure out what could have taken place, making hundreds of models of the situation from the point of view of each one of 11 police officers until we cross-reference them and discover where Mark Duggan was, the trajectory of the fire, the folds of his cloth, and reconstruct his movements, last movement, one by one. So this 1 second, 50 milliseconds, perhaps the most controversial 2 seconds gap in the history of London. We were trying to create a system by which we could see the scene from the point of view of each one of the police officers, realizing the limitation of a flat screen. We wanted to test what the police was saying, that Mark Duggan could have thrown the gun. However, none of them said they saw the gun being thrown, but the only explanation that could lead to the gun being on the grass is that he threw the gun. But flat screen is not exactly the best way to do it, because human vision has a central vision where you can describe detail and a peripheral one where you can describe movement. and we built a kind of a VR system that allowed us to take investigators right into the scene of the crime and show that, you know, the gun would have traveled for all of them points of view, and that he couldn't have thrown it without a policeman seeing it. This is what it would look like from, if he would actually throw the gun, this is what it would have looked like. A video that emerged later, the police claimed that actually it shows that they are not planting the gun, that it doesn't show any evidence, and we had to go into like really basic explanation to show, well, what you can see and what you can't see in a video. Here are the black shadows, which are the areas invisible to the camera. Here is the area where anyone that entered into that white shadow behind the cars potentially could have taken the gun from the vehicle after Mark Duggan left the vehicle without unarmed, which is what we suspected has happened, that one of the police officers could enter into the car after they realized, oh, we shot up somebody without a gun, and mapped all those moments where police officers were actually behind the vehicle in red, showing the potential moments and all the possibilities of them having moved the gun from the grass back to the car. I want you to look at it. It's a very, very detailed investigation. You need to study carefully. It's on our website. And we show all the different pathways that the gun could have arrived from the minicab to the grass by the police. And then at the end, we showed something very disturbing. We identified actually a gap in that video cut where you see one of the persons that we think could have been the person to have gone into the car. And in the video, we see a cut because we saw him on the right side of the vehicle. Here we see him on the left side. So we know there's a cut. We calculated the length of the cut. And in fact, here what we do is, again, we're not showing like positive evidence. We're showing problems in a police discourse. We're deconstructing the police investigation in order to unsettle it and open the process that we think might have led to the killing of Mark Duggan. So that has, this investigation has already helped the family settle with the police, receive some compensation, and to open perhaps the counter-police investigation.
Decision.
But this is what we hear all the time. This is regarding another killing we investigated in Chicago, and this is Chicago superintendent, and he says,
use lethal force is made in a split second.
The split second, always the split second, which is a kind of a site of exception in time, because in a split second, a subject loses their right to life. So you could say it's equivalent to a certain extent to the space of exception in a Gambon's theory, like the camp, where you lose your right, you lose your citizenship, you lose all your right within the site of exception. The split second in space is what the camp is, is in time what the camp is in space. We need to understand in a split second how it is really by looking at the instinct, usually the instinct of white police officers shooting black civilians, that their sense of threat, their imaginary sense of threat, so that somebody can jump out of a car in London, be shot twice, the policeman can be sure he saw a gun in the hand, but because the hand is black, he saw that gun. And therefore, in a split second, in a molecular level of time, we can see the long history of slavery and colonization, of segregation and apartheid. Thank you very much for listening to this lecture.
For example.
Thank you, Eyal, for this really fascinating talk and great examples indeed. So I'll start with my questions, and the first one is what strikes me actually in your work and the work of the forensic architecture is that through a set of micro examples, let's say, such as the damages of the building as a result of the military conflict, and the similar small-scale investigations, and maybe if we can name it small-scale micro-political interventions, these that can lead to the depiction of some kind of the micro-political background, or let's say detection of some political position of the state or some certain political actors. So I'm wondering, what do you think, how these small examples illuminate broader political contexts and situations, and maybe ended with some certain political position?
This is really about the question of how to enter into history. Mm-hmm. We think ourselves also as historians, with the historical record, with the document being today social media files and data and leaks, etc. And our entry point into history is always through an incident, through the molecular level, and then we need to travel along the threads, the causal thread, to see what world would enable an incident like that to happen. How that incident is revealing something about the world of which it is part, how it is nested within it. How can you move up those causal chain upwards in order to understand those things? And that's kind of this interscalarity, this movement across scale, is a very important move in anti-fascist work. You, rather than tell the history from above and go to below, you start from the moment and tear apart. So like if you think about the shop in Germany, 77 square meters, all the social relation between the state, migrant communities, and Nazis are architecturally established within 77 square meters. It's almost like you have a marble, you crack something and you try to move the cracks up to the scale of Germany and Europe as a whole.
So, in addition to these questions, just to add, is it possible the work of the forensic architecture to be depoliticized, because the cases you investigate are, let's say, politicized?
Yeah, I mean, we only choose places where we can think. It's like acupuncture. What is, put the needle where it matters, where it could have most effect, because we have limited means. And we want to do little things well and choose very well the line of attack and then act.
Okay, thank you. So my next question is about methodology or selection criteria, let's say, because your work started over the Israeli and Palestinian conflicts, but as I read some report, now you have 60 investigations, covering events in 18 countries. So where the cases are qualitatively different. For example, you have this oceanography projects in the Central Mediterranean, the death of the Bedouin teacher, the murder of the human in the internet cafe by right-wing activists. So all these cases have in common violation of the human rights and violation of the humanitarian law. But what is a, let's say, specific point when you start something to investigate?
If a case is part of a social movement, if this case is part of an organized social movement or civil society protest, so we choose those kind of like hinge cases, like exemplary cases that we can work with, and we try with that to work differently as a human rights organization. We work with minuscule funding in relation to human rights groups. We're a small team. We need to choose very well our anti-colonial and anti-fascist work to make a difference. So we take very few cases and we do them very, very, with a lot of care, a lot of love, a lot of attention, a lot of collaboration. We choose those cases that we can collaborate with communities on the ground that experience violence firsthand. We don't want to work like expert from above. We always work with the people.
Thank you. So my next question is about the evidence as a work of art. So Do you think that cultural institutions and galleries should be confident in employing science as a means to shape this public debate in the policy? And in addition to this, that maybe your example is a paradigmatic way of effectively doing art today?
Thank you for your trust. I don't know. I don't know if we are artists. We are scientists. We are artists. We're filmmakers. We're lawyers. We are historians, and we unsettle, I think, all the fields in which we operate. We have unsettled journalism because you know, a lot of you know, become now mainstream in the New York Times and other places, our techniques. We unsettle human rights work. A lot of people are using our methodology. Law, I'm advising the ICC in The Hague on new evidence. So it's working in that way.
Thank you. So the next question is about the term political plastic. You use this term in the, let's say, explanation of organization of the occupied territories, where you included architecture as a part of this political plastic. So do you think that this term political plastic can be extrapolated over the all material culture, let's say? Can be used not only for the architecture, but for other forms of material culture?
Yeah, I think that all the material world is a sensor, effectively. It's a sensor of action. This is what, in a kind of post-photographic, the condition of post-photography is two things. On the one hand is proliferation of images, social media, etc., deprofessionalization of photography. On the other hand, it's looking at every piece of material surface as if it is a photograph, in a sense of it's registering traces of use. This is something I started with a Mengele skull, in which the skull of Mengele is seen as a kind of a, I think Tom and I refer to kind of like a film in long exposure, registering the life like a film is registering light. So effectively looking at material elements as political plastic is looking at the way in which forces, actions are registered in form. And form is an index of its past processes. And this is a process of non-human aesthetics. So this is you started speaking about aesthetics as that which connect to sensing, and indeed, what does sensing is not only human. Sensors do sensing. A negative exposed to light does sensing. A leaf on a tree senses the sun. So we need to look at this kind of expanded field of sensing that, together with Matt Fuller, a media theories, they're called the hyperesthetics. In the next stage, hyperesthetics is to aestheticize, to see as trace-bearing surfaces all material parts of the world. On the one hand. On the other hand is to network them together, is to put together a reading from a leaf, to a reading from a cloud, to a reading from a photograph, to a reading from memory of a human. And all those come together is to hyper-aestheticize. It's called hyperesthetics in our theory. But that could lead to hyperesthesia, which is the third category Matt and I are going through, where sensing don't make sense anymore. When you have overexposure of signal, when it short circuits, when you go into madness.
Thank you. So also about, let's say, about the architecture, that it's a part of the military strategy. So I read one article of Stuart Eldon who referred to your work and who actually investigated this vertical geopolitics and what does it mean secure the area. So the practice of forensic architecture in which you reconstruct a scene from the, let's say, architectural evidence is necessarily after the fact. But do you think that architects can let's say, somehow suggest some measures, some preventions, let's say, before that fact?
think that prediction is part of the whole world of hyperesthesization, of sensing. What could happen based on what has happened. In fact, this is what the state does on us. This is the way in which you're targeted with ads and political messages, and sometimes with missile, when your actions in the future are being predicted by some kind of algorithmic processes. The flip side of that is that you can look at where danger, when vulnerability emerges, and turn your attention there. You can advise people making a very difficult migrant route from, say, Turkey through the Balkan to Central and Western Europe. What is the best way to be taken? And we helping that too.
Okay, thank you so much, Eyal. Thank you so much for your lecture and for this talk. Thank you so much. See you.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed speaking to you, and I thought that your questions were very challenging and interesting, and I enjoyed them. Thank you. Thank you, everybody else. If there, I don't know if there's anyone there, but if there is.
Okay, thank you once again. Bye.
Bye-bye.